Hello everybody, my name is Drake. I've become my sister's servant. And honestly, it's the most unpleasant thing that can happen to relatives. Watch and listen to how I got caught in the net and how it turned out for me. I have a sister named Reva. She's a couple of years older than me but crafty like 5 years. Reva just hated household chores, then our mom, she worked and always stressed. Do this, do that. You couldn't get any help from my dad. Even though he worked remotely from home. He still sat in his office all day and all night long. He wouldn't even come out of there, and his mother would call and ask him to feed him. Go feed your father. What? Mom called? Yeah, you go. I fed him yesterday. I can't. I'm on the phone with Kat. I'm doing my homework, Reva. Look, Drake, I've told you 100 times that talking to your friend is sacred. And if you don't want to lose your allowance, go. Reva, that's not fair. Fair? If you don't do it, I'll tell my mom. I'm sick of it. That's it, I'm going to my room. And it was like this almost every day. She took advantage of my labor. I ended up having to feed my father. Dad wouldn't even look up from the computer, he would just take food off his plate and eat it. Sometimes I thought if I slipped him a piece of wood instead of food, he would eat it too. Anyway, one day, I was sick of it all. I was mad at Reva, and I was mad at Mom, because she didn't care who was feeding Dad, and I was mad at Dad not being able to feed himself at 45. What am I, your housekeeper? I yelled to the whole house, but no one heard me. Then Mom came out of the room and said she and Dad were leaving on an urgent business trip to the office and asked Reva and me to clean up Dad's garage. Dad's garage? That garage is more my garage than his. Why? Because he puts the car in there and that's it, and I'm the one who takes care of it. I'm asking you and Reva, but she doesn't do anything. She makes me do nothing. And you don't want to solve it. You're adults, come to an agreement. It's not working out. Frankly, I'm glad you're doing it. Because you're the only one who's good at it. Son, Reva cleans badly and cooks even worse. What's that got to do with me? It had nothing to do with me. It just happened. We're off. Bye. One thing was clear. My problems are my problems and nobody else's. Sometimes I felt like I was just a foster kid who'd been hired just to clean up. That's why Reva was freaking out, and why I did. Well, at that point I was determined that I would do everything so that I wouldn't be asked to do anything later. I went into the garage and began not to put things in order, but on the contrary scattered everything, threw everything here and there, threw everything at random. And I accidentally hit a vase with the bag. It broke. And you know, it's not that this vase was somehow important to the parents, just that it was grandfather's ashes. My grandfather was peculiar, was into Buddhism, and before he died, he wanted to be cremated. Well, the ashes were then scattered over the sea. My mother took the vase to the garage in advance, so we did not forget it, because just this weekend we were going to go to the sea. We weren't going there just for my grandfather. My father had an important meeting. The vase for about a year stood in our hall, on the mantle, and recently my mother took it out and said that we should not forget it. So anyway, now my grandfather wasn't in the vase, but on the car, on the floor, on old boxes of stuff. I didn't know what to do out of fear. The only thing I wanted was for my mother not to find out. I quickly started picking up his ashes with a broom and shoving them back into another vase, along with the dust and dirt, then quickly cleaned up the garage and ran to the shower. When I came out of there, Reva was standing at the door. Oh. Scared me. Wash the kitchen floor. I'll do it myself, I won't do anything else. Right? And if I tell my mom what you did? What? Did you see everything? Of course, I did, you idiot. How could you do that? Where do your hands come from? Don't fucking tell her, please. So I won't tell her, go clean up. All right. I'll do it. It's your fault, you shouldn't have done that. Maybe she was right about something. I always cleaned up, but I should have done it today. I had no choice. I cleaned up, my parents came in. Reva came out to them with a mysterious smile and looked at me. Is something wrong? No, I mean, nothing. I cleaned up, everything is okay. Reva, what happened to your face? Is everything okay? Yes, we cleaned the kitchen. You cleaned too? Yes, she did, I cleaned the garage.
Well done. Thank you, children. At the weekend we're going to the sea, don't forget to pack a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to Kat's.
Maybe we'll have dinner at the cafe?
I have to go, I'll see you later.
What about you, Drake?
Aw, are you going to put the car in the garage?
No, we used Mom's, we'll use it. Why?
No, I was just asking. Your car is very dirty, we should take it to a car wash.
It's weird, I thought I washed it the other day.
Probably after your general cleaning? Yes, that's right. Okay, I'm going to get ready and go to the cafe. After dinner at the cafe, we came home and I went to bed. I felt terrible, I was tossing and turning all night, and I had nightmares. More specifically, I dreamt about my grandfather. As if he came into my bedroom, all dirty, sat on the bed and looked at me sadly. I got up and asked him what happened, and my grandfather told me, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You mixed my ashes with dirt. How can I rest in peace now, knowing that my grandson did this to me? I'm sorry, Grandpa, I didn't do it on purpose."
Couldn't you have cleaned up properly? Look at the state I'm in now.
I started sobbing, asking him to forgive me, and then I woke up abruptly. Grandfather was disappointed, I knew it was my fault. All the days that followed, Reva blackmailed me. I did all the work for her, and she threatened to tell my mother everything if I refused. I became her servant, washed dishes, cleaned, cooked, did laundry, even cleaned her room, and sometimes gave her my money. Just so she wouldn't say anything to my mother. But my conscience wouldn't leave me alone. The day came when we had to leave for the sea. We packed everything, and I looked in the trunk of my bag and saw that there was a neatly wrapped vase. I remembered my grandfather and even felt sick with excitement. We drove almost all day and finally arrived. The first thing we did was unload our stuff and then we went to the beach. Reva took her camera and asked me to take pictures of her every step. And I was so tired of her by that time, plus I was thinking about my grandfather all the time and it was getting worse. I had bruises under my eyes, I lost my appetite and I didn't sleep a wink. "I'm fed up with you. What am I? Your photographer? I do all your work for you. What's wrong with you? I can't do what you want. I'm like your servant. I'm sick of it. Alright, I'll go tell my mom about what you've done." Stop. She didn't listen to me. Her parents were carrying a bundle in their hands. Reva just opened her mouth to complain, but Mom asked her to talk about it later. "Let's go. Now we have an important moment. Grandpa's last wish." "Why? Already?" "Yes, while we're here, we should do it first thing." "Mom, Dad, Drake has something to tell you." "What? Are you crazy? Is it because I didn't want to take your picture? You're an idiot, you know that?"
What? Son, you can't talk like that. Where are your manners?
"What the hell kind of manners? You let her get away with everything. And I'm like a cleaner and a cook in the kitchen and the house all day long. And what does Reva do? All she does is talk on the phone and tell me to get undressed. Is that fair? What, Reva want to tell me? Go ahead, I can't be your servant anymore. If you ever noticed that I do everything by myself, you wouldn't treat me like one. I didn't want Grandpa's ashes mixed in with the dirt in our garage, but as it is, go ahead and yell. I'm such a defective son." "What, ashes? What did you say, ashes? What do you mean?"
What did you do with the ashes?
"Oh, what did you? I thought Reva know about that." "Okay, we need to talk. What did you do with Grandpa's ashes?" I told it like it is. I cried for a long time and told about my dream, that my grandfather judged me and I was ashamed. Mom suddenly smiled and then showed me a completely different box. It had a lid and it was closed. "What are they?" "Grandpa's ashes were in the vase you broke, but we put them in this box before the trip. And that vase must have had dust in it or something. So I didn't do anything to Grandpa?"
No, you didn't, but we're having a separate conversation with Reva.
"What about me?" Hooray! I was so relieved. It was the best day of my life.
Hi, my name is Den. I don't want to sound unassuming, but if you haven't met any guys who don't have a lot of nobility or something, well, I'm one of them. I'm joking, and I'm not joking. In short, listen to my story. I guarantee you will be intrigued. And yes, I will be happy if you write your opinion in the comments, as well as like my story. Anyway, at first we lived as a small family. Dad, Mom, Sister Abby, and me. We lived like everyone else. Abby and I went to school, and my parents worked. We did not often relax with the family. Recently, we used to like to skate and go to the movies together or just sit at home and watch something, discuss, play Monopoly, and then entertainment became less and less. Abby and I have already asked our parents to sit with us, but each time we heard some excuses, especially from my mother, and then it turned out that she wanted to leave us. Yes, it was a nightmare. We didn't even believe it at first, but when my mother packed her bags and said that she had another one, it was a huge blow for our father. I was even afraid that he would never come to his senses, but little by little, we began to cope. Several years have passed since that moment, and I still remember how my mother ran out of the house to the taxi that arrived and did not even turn around. Of course, I was so angry. Abby was more upset, and Dad was in shock. And so, as soon as we all came to our senses, Dad gave us a gift. Guess what? I already had a bad feeling that day. I knew something bad was going to happen. I'd missed the first class, which was an important test. The teacher was mad at me, sent me to retake, and Abby had fallen off her bike that day and hurt her leg. I rushed to the medicine cabinet, but there wasn't even a green card. My mood was already spoiled. In the evening, we were waiting for my father. He promised to bring us delicious food and a restaurant. In the end, we set the table and were already hungry and waiting for my father, when suddenly the door opened and a woman came in instead of my father. Dad followed her in with a bunch of bags in his hands, and there was food. We got up and said hello like well-behaved children, took the package, and started unloading them. The lady said we were really cute and ran to wash our hands and then started helping us. We looked at her questioningly, but it wasn't proper to ask her out loud in front of a guest, so we just didn't say anything. It was just before dinner started that the father said the woman's name was Miss Tiara, but she interrupted him and told us to just call her Tiara. We also introduced ourselves and started eating. Judging by the dinner, and the way father carefully tended to her, it was obvious that they were dating, and not so long ago. When dinner was over, Abby and I went to our rooms. Before going to bed, Abby said she didn't like Miss Tiara, but I asked her to wait for her conclusions. After all, our dad is lonely, and it's normal for him to start a relationship all these years later. Our mother probably has her own family for a long time. Abby lowered her head and lay down on the bed. I made her promise not to tell my dad her opinion yet, at least until he officially made a statement. She agreed. Tiara had come to our house several times in the past week, and Abby still hadn't kept her promise. Tiara, she said to her as Miss picked up a glass of juice and sipped it slowly, "Are you sleeping with my father?" At that moment, Miss's nose was full of juice. My father was choking on the meat, and I was all smiles. Father scolded her for asking such a direct question, but Tiara stopped him. She told Abby that she and Dad are dating and she really hopes to be friends with us. My sister said that our family doesn't need such friends. "We're fine without you," she said. Dad scolded her again, and I excused myself, took her hand, and led her into the room. I talked to her, asked her not to do it again, and asked her to give my father a chance. After dinner, of course, we both had a lecture from my father. I asked him if he intended to marry her, to which my father did not answer clearly. Abby said she didn't like the tiara, but Dad asked her not to be jealous and to give her time to prove herself. Then he went to his room. At night of the same day, my father received a call from work and was told to go on a business trip urgently. This didn't happen before, so we were very confused. I didn't know what to do with Abby, even though she was already going to school, but she still seemed like a child to me. Dad immediately called Tiara and asked her to come. Yes, she agreed to look after us for a couple of days in his absence. It was polite of her, but Abby was hysterical. We quickly saw my father off and went to bed. Abby came to my room to talk. She said she didn't trust the woman, and I explained that she was just jealous of father, but that sooner or later he would get married. At that time, we had no idea what was waiting for us. Abby and I stayed up late that night. I passed out, and my sister couldn't sleep, so she went out for a drink of water. She woke me up in the middle of the night, and I didn't even know what was going on. Abby was frantic about Tiara going through Dad's things, but I didn't think it was strange. Let her dig. In the morning, we woke up to the gorgeous smell of pancakes. It turned out that Tiara made us breakfast, which was nice, and I thanked her for it, but Abby didn't even touch it. Then Tiara said that she wanted to make friends with us, so she came up with some games for us, and walks in the park. I thought it was a good idea, and Abby didn't say anything, but I dressed her and we went to the park. After walking for a couple of hours, we got hungry and returned home. While I was changing, Abby noticed something strange in the house, and she said that Tiara had found Dad's vault and was trying to break into it. and I didn't like it anymore. I went into my father's room, and Tiara quickly jumped out of there. "Oh, I thought you were asleep. Don't you sleep during the day?" She laughed nervously. Abby called her a thief and chased her out of the house. I asked her to leave politely and watched her go with a very unkind look. We called my father and asked him to come. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Wow, is Dad that fast? I opened the door, and there were police officers and a tear-stained Tiara. The uniformed man said they needed to talk to their father, but when they found out he wasn't there, he wanted to take Abby to the station. To my questions, he said that she was suspected of stealing someone else's ring. Her, the policeman said, pointed at the tiara. "What?" I asked. "Yes, this is a mistake. It can't be. We see it for the first time in our lives," I shouted, but everything turned out to be useless. Tiara ran into our house and started turning everything over, and then opened the safe and pulled out her ring. Can you imagine my face? Abby started crying. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. And then he said I did it. I took all the blame. They took me to the station, and I told Abby to wait for Father. After a few hours of waiting, my father arrived. He didn't know how to react, and the tearful Tiara rushed to his shoulder to cry. I didn't say anything. I knew he wouldn't believe me. He didn't take anything Abby said, because we're the only ones who know the code to the safe. And just when I thought I was really going to jail, Abby suddenly dragged my father home. She asked him to trust her, but I didn't know what she was up to. It turns out that our little smart girl remembered about the video cameras in our house. Dad looked at the records and saw everything for himself, then saved them and gave them to the police. I was released, and Tiara was put in my place. It turned out that she wanted to get rid of us, his children, so that we wouldn't get in her way. She only wanted to arrange their personal life, but we were superfluous there. It's a good thing we installed cameras a long time ago. My father was in shock, and for a long time asked us for forgiveness. Did you like our story? Then put likes, comment, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, friends.